Game of Thrones and the War of the Roses. What connects them? Part 3. And since we've touched on young Edward, let's talk about him as well. Edward of Westminster and Joffrey Baratheon. Edward was born during a political crisis caused by his father's illness, which periodically led to rumors that the prince's real father was someone else. Since Edward was almost constantly by Margaret's side during the power struggle, many considered him a spoiled and helpless child who also displayed naive cruelty and a complete lack of understanding of the value of human life. Does this also evoke an image of Joffrey in your mind? Edward's character differed greatly from Cersei's elder son. The prince had many teachers and mentors. He grew up to be an intelligent and far-sighted young man. However, the influence of his mother did not go unnoticed. Edward had a warlike and irascible temper. In a letter from the Milanese ambassador in France, the 13-year-old prince is described as a child who speaks of nothing but beheadings and war, as if he has everything he needs, or he is the god of war. Edward IV and Robb Stark, the Yorkists, also had their own Edward, known in history as Edward IV. He was the eldest son of Richard of York, and took over the House of York over his father's death in battle, when his father's head was displayed in a paper crown for the amusement of the crowd. Robb's father was executed on the orders of Joffrey, and his head ended up on a spike. Like Edward, Robb, wishing to avenge his father's death, gathered an army and marched south against his enemy. King Edward IV had close ties to the north, particularly to York, just as Robb Stark represented the north of the kingdom. Like Edward, Robb came to power at a young age, but in a short time he managed to become renowned as a skilled and successful military leader. Another important similarity with Edward is Robb's hasty and impulsive marriage out of love to a very beautiful but not very noble woman, Elizabeth Woodville, who was also a widow. This marriage later caused problems for Edward's children, as his brother Richard declared their union unlawful and all their descendants bastards. With Robb Stark, it turned out even worse. He took a serious political risk for the sake of marrying his beloved girl, thereby not fulfilling the promise given by his mother Catelyn to Walder Frey. It all ended with the Red Wedding, which Martin also took from history, in this case Scottish. The writer turned to two real incidents, the so-called Black Dinner and the massacre at Glencoe. The former occurred in 1440, when representatives of the powerful Clan Douglas were invited to a dinner with King James I in Edinburgh Castle, where in the midst of the feast they were accused of treason, dragged out into the courtyard and beheaded. The Glencoe massacre took place in 1692, when members of the Clan MacDonald were slaughtered by their guests in their own home. This brutal reprisal was allegedly aimed at subduing the warring clans who refused to recognize the authority of the new King William of Orange. The Red Wedding became one of the most brutal and shocking moments in the series. The Lannisters once again demonstrated what can happen to the enemies of their family. Unlike Robb, Edward was not killed. Moreover, he managed to win the first phase of the Wars of the Roses and successfully occupy the English throne. The second period of the War of the Roses, is more akin to the rebellion of Baratheon against the tyranny of the Targaryens, where the Lancasters have taken the role of the Targaryens, and the Yorks, the alliance led by Robert Baratheon. Evidence of this can be seen in the later years of Edward IV, who transforms from Robb Stark into the young Robert Baratheon. Thanks to his military genius, Edward of York defeats the Lancastrian forces and carries out a veritable massacre, destroying a large part of the royal family. Margaret and her son flee to France, just as the last of the Targaryens flee from Westeros. Edward IV ruled for 22 years, and is best remembered for his debauchery, excessive drinking, and numerous love affairs. However, unlike the Targaryens, the Lancasters did not give up their attempts to regain the throne. In the 1470s, with French support, Margaret returned to Britain, but the Lancasters were defeated again. In the Battle of Tewkesbury, they were finally crushed. Prince Edward, just 17 years old like Joffrey, met a nobler death in battle than the young King of Westeros. After the defeat at Tewkesbury and the death of her only son, Margaret was completely broken. She was captured and imprisoned by King Edward's orders. After several years of captivity, the French ransomed Margaret, and she spent the rest of her days in France as an impoverished royal relation. Dear friends, if you enjoy our stories, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and leave a comment if you wish. Additionally, please subscribe to our new channel, where we explore the history of Britain from ancient times to the present day, delving into the history of royal dynasties, medieval wars, and crusades. The link to the channel in the description of this video.